Okay, go ahead.
This is a home interview, Woodstock, New York. It is the 28th of July, 2003, approximately 1:30 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Yeah, my name is Raymond O'Connor. My date of birth is 10/26/25. My place of birth was New York City.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
High school graduate.
Okay. Where were you, and what do you remember when you heard your emotions on when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
When I heard about Pearl Harbor, I was living in Queens, Sunnyside, and President Roosevelt had spoken on the radio and had indicated in his famous speech what had happened at Pearl Harbor. I was then probably about 15, I think, and of course this changed the whole complexion of our thinking on the war.
Do you remember what your emotions were when you heard about this at all? Or
I think really at the time, as I recall it, you became very nationalistic in your thinking because of the concern of what was to happen not only with the Japanese but also in Europe.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted. Funny thing about my past, I had taken the Air Corps exam and passed, but I'm colorblind, so I could never go into any of those different levels of schools. So I waited until I was drafted and then went into the infantry.
Okay. Where were you inducted and where did you go for your basic?
I was inducted into at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I went to Camp Wheeler, Georgia, in January of 1944.
Was this your first time away from home?
No, I had been in camps when I was a child, but it was the first of that sort anyway.
Okay. Did you receive any specialized training at all?
There, I was there for 17 weeks of basic infantry training, heavy machine guns, all weapons of the infantry. And at the end of that period of time, after the 17 weeks, we were to go overseas, but the government stopped 18-year-olds going over. And so I was sent up with the rest of the 18-year-olds to Camp Butner in North Carolina. We stayed there for 6 months before being sent to Europe in January 1944.
Okay. How did you go overseas?
They had a
convoy or a single ship?
They had a convoy. We all got
And
seasick.
did your entire unit go together?
Yes, we all got seasick.
Seasick, okay. Where did you land?
We landed at Le Havre and got off in these little LT boats, and we stayed on the shore there for early morning. It was very, very cold. And then we left on trucks to a site called Camp Lucky Strike, which was about 25 miles away, which we stayed there for maybe 10 days, 12 days or so, before going into combat.
Where was your first combat?
My first combat was at the border of Germany, Trier, the city of Trier. And my first assignment as a machine gunner in that company was to cross the Moselle River.
Now you operated the heavy machine gun?
Yeah, I was second gunner. I called out where the the bullets were to go. And so we passed. Our first two attempts weren't too successful. Our battalion then went and we were successful. And then proceeded to head towards Frankfurt, Koblenz. Those are a couple of the names I just offhand remember, and headed south towards Austria.
What were some of the things you remember, either amusing or things that
I
stand
think,
out in your
yeah,
mind?
if you're talking from a combat standpoint, the first thing I remember is it was late at night. The Germans had a tank that was sitting on the road in front of us. We didn't see it, and was shooting point blank at us. At first, I thought it was a landmine that landed in a ditch. Shortly after that, they sent up flares all around us, and we headed into the ditches on the side of the road, and they were firing machine guns and everything at us. We, as soon as those went out, escaped up to the wooded area, and waited till I contacted another member, and we reorganized our attack on them. One of our lieutenants got a silver star there. He threw a grenade into that tank, and we were successful in moving ahead.
Okay. Is there anything else that stands out on your way through the Rhineland or into Austria?
No, this was, of course, the last third of the
Yeah.
war. So we were on a continual move at this time forward, and the Germans were just having delayed tactics used on us. So one morning you'd be running into trouble. Some days you just walk all day and then get hit at night, but you just continue it on in that manner. The artillery at that time, the 88s and heavy artillery they had, was pretty effective, but it didn't stop us from going ahead. General Patton's tanks and I believe it was the 4th Armored Division, they were ahead of us most of the time, and he was doing a very good job.
Did you ever see Patton himself?
No.
What were your feelings about him? Did you have any feelings about him?
Reading the Stars and Stripes and hearing the comments that he made, he was, we knew how courageous he was, but as far as a person, he didn't appeal to me too much.
Okay. Did you ever liberate any of the concentration camps?
Yes.
Were you aware of them? Or
The first one we had, and I don't remember the city it was in, there was English soldiers trapped there, and they look like some of the pictures people have seen of German, Jewish people on TV. They were as skinny could be, and so happy to see us. And then I was at another camp. We didn't see anything. We didn't go into it. We just guarded it from the outside. I don't recall which one that was.
did you liberate any American POW camps?
That might have been one of them, but we didn't see them.
Okay. How about the concentration camps?
That was a concentration
Okay.
camp that I'm speaking of,
All right.
but I don't know exactly what city that was in.
Okay. Were there large numbers of Germans surrendering to you?
Oh, yes. Well, and not in the quantities that you would, 100,000 or anything like that, but in 200 or 300, 400 at a clip was starting to show up. In other words, we would attack a certain position, that they were firing at us, but then all of a sudden we'd see white flags coming up, and there'd be 200 or 300 that would give themselves up.
What did you do with that many prisoners?
They were sent back in the line, and we just kept going forward. Police, I guess, I don't know, whoever took care of them at the time, came up, military police, whatever.
Whereabouts were you, and what were your thoughts when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt?
That's interesting, because it was such a beautiful day over there. I remember it distinctly, because there was planes being sent over towards Germany, and I never in my life had seen so many planes in the sky, bombers, just continually flown overhead. Personally, I I was near, I was in tears almost when I had heard he died. I felt so strongly about him. Most of the men were very sad about that.
Okay, were you assigned to the Army of Occupation at all?
After the war, what we did was, which was kind of funny in a way, when I think of some of the experiences, was we went back to our old camp that we initially had set up, Camp Lucky Strike in France. It was near the village of Fécamp. And we stayed there until we were sent home.
I know what I wanted to ask. Did you ever have any encounter with the Russians?
No, we were, in the final days of combat, we were just not too far away from them. I believe they were in Linz, was the city, I don't know if that's Germany or Austria, but Linz, and we thought we were going to hook up with them, but we didn't.
Okay. When did you return to the United States?
In May of 1946.
What happened, what was your reaction when you heard about the dropping of the atomic bombs?
To me, I felt that this was really a great moment in our history, because I knew that if we had sent divisions in towards Japan, that was going to be a tremendous loss of life on the part of the American soldiers. The humanistic part of it, and thinking of the number of people that were killed and all, in truth, as a soldier, I don't think I was thinking so sympathetically towards the Japanese. Later I thought about it, and I naturally felt bad about it.
When you returned home after your discharge, did you make use of the GI Bill at all?
Yes, I in fact went through college on the GI Bill.
Did you ever use the 5220 club?
Yes. Yes, we joined the 5220 club.
Did you max out?
$20 a week, I think it was.
Yes, for
Yeah.
52 weeks.
Yeah.
Did you use
Yeah.
the full amount? Or?
Well,
No.
no, because or what did I? No, because I got home in 46, May, and I went to college in October.
Okay. Did you keep in contact with anyone that you served?
Yes, there was one fellow, let's see, anybody else. There was one gentleman, I not for too long, no.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
No.
Oh, still not a member?
No.
Okay. How do you think your time in service changed or affected your life?
I'd have to say is from becoming a grown-up person, this probably was my real introduction to realizing that I was a man and that the future was up to me. And I was no longer the schoolboy that I was when I first went in.
Do you think you would have gone on to college if it wasn't for the GI Bill?
I doubted it except for one thing. I was a basketball player and I was pretty good in Queens, New York. I was a starting five with Grover Cleveland High School. I might have gotten a scholarship.
Okay. Did you ever get to see a USO show us at all while you were?
Yes, and there was, I'm trying to think of his name. He was killed in an auto accident, and you probably know his name. He was a comedian, and in the 50s. He was, we saw him just right after we had combat that particular...
Was it Ernie Kovacs, was it?
No. Gee, I wish I could remember, but I can't. Off and on I remember his name. And he was so funny that we literally I recall it distinctly, looking at my friends, the soldiers, that our faces looked old. At least that's the way it struck me at the time, looking at them. And we were laughing so hard that our faces actually hurt. This man was so funny to us.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add at all, or any funny experiences?
Well, if you want to hear it, I'll just give it to you.
Sure.
When we had gone to Camp Lucky strike after the war, we were assigned different duties, and I was in charge of Germans to police an airstrip. This was in August, and the weather was very hot, and I wasn't looking forward to doing that. So I took these German prisoners I had, and we sat under an apple tree, or whatever it was under a tree, and we talked about the war. I gave them cigarettes, and a few of them spoke very good English. For the next day, I went and spoke with the lieutenant who was in charge, and I said our tents and our area was all in mud, and I could put them to good use rather than doing the airstrip, which we never did do. And he thought that was a good idea, so I came back and got rid of all these prisoners to the sergeant, and I kept 3 for myself. But in my mind, I knew that these people were very handy in doing work. And the night before, or a couple of nights before, we had visited the officers' area that had been building a club, for social club. They had all this lumber and doors and everything under the sun. And so I thought about this, and we took doors and wood and nails, whatever was necessary, back to our tent and put them to work fixing up our tent. So we had floor, a door, and all these strips around it to keep it nice and neat. First sergeant came around looking at this work, and he was from Arkansas, and I don't know if he was, in my opinion, he was very slow. But anyway, what I did was I talked to him, and I said, would you like to have something similar, see? And he said yes, and so we made another raid and got the necessary things for him and the lieutenant, and they had their tents all fixed up, just like mine. Well, he finally came back after a couple of days, and I was laying in my cot, and I had the Germans, they were fixing little shelves, and all of a sudden I got kicked in the foot. And he says, think you're pretty smart, don't you? He didn't like Yankees. And he said, tonight you're going up on the coal pile and guard that, and this other guy will do the airstrip. So I take my blankets and I go to the coal pile, and I tell the guys that come behind me to wake me up when they get there, which was true. And the other guy who got the airstrip, he wanted to come back to the company. He ended up doing the airstrip in this hot day, and he was furious, yelling my name out. Where was I? And we were all laughing so hard. But I thought that was one of the funniest things we ever happened.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.